this meeting and for the topic. 10 weeks ago, at the New York Climate Summit, we had a first get-together of the carbon standards, talking about this question of integrity and cooperation between carbon standards to drive integrity in the market. And that was endorsed by the COP28 presidency, and 10 weeks later, 2 days ago, there was a very big joint statement, and it really hit the press very big time. And what was also done, and there's a work program, and what was also done, and this is I think on undertaking of David, was decided to put together a climate finance hour, like one event per day, hosted by IETA, on other really important topics for integrity. And there were a bunch of meetings, and in the meetings we discussed what would be interesting topics for that for these climate finance hours. And one of the winners as a new topic was the topic of insurance, and here especially the topic of durability. And the real purpose behind this is that within our community, of our climate action community, we have this really unfortunate development of different tribes. Here's a nature-based community, and here's the technology removal community, and while everybody should actually be aligned, people often talk against each other. And this topic was identified because there are some who believe that insurance might be a great way to show the nature-based community and the technology removal community that there is actually a gain in working together. And this centers around this topic of durability. Durability means the assurance that a ton of carbon will stay out of the atmosphere for an extended period of time. Now, to be effective for climate change, we're talking about 100-year time frame. So how sure can we be that a ton removed will stay out for 100 years? Now, you will know that this is not the metric for carbon today. The metric for carbon today is 1 ton removed in a year, a vintage, which, considering the durability question, is actually fairly irrelevant, because it's how long is it removed. And not addressing this question creates an integrity challenge. So that's how durability and insurance is related to integrity. And since we are in the dimension of risk, the risk of a non-permanence, the risk of non-durability, who is dealing with risk? Who is dealing with pricing of risk? Insurance. So it is absolutely unfortunate that our expert on this, Rowan Douglas from Howden Group, apparently also lives in a world of probability and risk, and his risk was that he didn't get a blue zone pass. So there was an 80% chance risk of him showing up, but we had no insurance for him not showing up, so he's not showing up. And so we have to kind of like make do without him, talk about insurance with the absence of an insurance guy. We didn't want to cancel the event, that was the other option. But we said, okay, he's not here, but it was actually not about selling product anyhow. This is figuring out how and if we can get this to work, and how and if we can use the high durability that is attached to certain type of technology removal project types. I mean, removal can be, and this is, I'm going to introduce David in a second, can go into thousands of years. Mineral storage, right? How can we use the high durability of a removal unit to make up for the low durability of certain other project types, like nature-based solutions, right? And if we find the right product, attach the durability co-benefit of a technology removal to the co-benefits of a nature-based removal, right? So nature-based removal, high on co-benefits on community side, and I'm going to let Bryce talk about that, but weak on another co-benefit, durability. Put the two together, we get the best of both worlds. And is this a bridge to make peace between the nature-based community and the technology removal community possibly. And what do we need to know and do, and who needs to talk to each other to make this solution work? So that's kind of like my introduction to the panel. So I want actually to give the floor first to the panelists, like take their, like, you know, what is their interest in the topic, why they're here, who are you? And then start this conversation of like, how could this become a solution? And then, because of our group size, I really want you to encourage you to participate in this, so that this really becomes a conversation. Now, because I said before, we're not selling solutions. This is very much dialogue. And I am actually very curious myself to find out where do we land now with this. So, but without further ado, I want to give the word to Bryce. If you just introduce yourself, and then kind of like also like get into this topic.
Sure. Hi everyone. So yeah, my name is Bryce. I work as the newly set up portfolio manager of the ADF Trading carbon desk. I started about 7 months ago. I've been in the carbon market for about 7 years, mostly as a project developer, and this is a very new kind of environment to me, but very interesting. On the topic of today, I think from our perspective, there is potentially an interest and understanding how that would work. As we were discussing yesterday, I think the main challenge for us is to try and understand how that would be priced. I suppose the economic model behind it is a little bit...
Sorry, how to put the price on what?
On the sort of insurance guarantee you were talking about, which would include potentially a tech removal project or credit included in a patch of NBS-based credits. I think that's the question that I don't have an answer for right now, but I think this is something that could be interesting in the long term. On the short term, it's been hard enough for us to kind of put kind of a value on the projects that we already have in our portfolio for the past 7 months. This is sort of my topic. This is what I've been focusing on. And you know, standardizing all of these different projects and project types to kind of commoditize them. This is the way that a trading company operates, and this is the way ADF Trading is operating. Has been very challenging, and I suspect that adding another layer of difficulty or complexity around you know, this permanence debate is something that we might have difficulty with in theory in the first few. As a first kind of feedback on this, but yeah, I mean, in terms of looking forward, I think it's an interesting approach. I think it's something that opens the debate around, you know, some of these other parameters around SDG and co-benefits and community involvement. I mean, why not put potentially an insurance mechanism around some of these points as well? But I suppose it's your turn as well.
My name is David Unger. I work for a company called Carbon Finance Laboratory. And the task of the company where I spent the last 4 years, I'm in the industry for 26 years so far. It was to develop a new class of products, engineered removals. I have a privilege to work with some of you here in the room. And when we were tasked to develop the first methodology for engineered removals, I really had to step back and look at where the carbon market is. I think we are really ending our carbon market, voluntary carbon market 1.0, and we are on the verge of having a new carbon market. I think this transition started by phasing out renewables from a lot of the standards and introducing new instruments which 5 or 7 years ago was considered science fiction, like direct air capture, for example, and so on. And I also noticed an emerging tribalism, which Ingo indicated that people on the nature-based side, they turning into terrified tree people, oh my God, the technical guy is going to take our money away and so on. But in the meantime, if you look back, we have a $2 billion market today. We are majoring in the minors, as they say in baseball in the United States. With $2 billion, we're not going to make a dent. This market either is going to grow exponentially or we have a serious problem. So I don't think any solution takes money away from the other value proposition, and both are very much needed. But also when you are working with a very expensive instrument at the first look, and direct air capture, as we all know, it's one of the highest priced instrument, you have to look at how you can apply it. I never forget when we started our methodology, the first experts, they said, oh, We're going to create a buffer. 9% of your credit should go to the buffer like in a nature-based. And my economists, they looked at David, if we have 9% set aside, we're never going to pull off a project. The plant costs $1 billion. We just can't do that. Well, but people don't understand that 99% plus of the carbon goes into the ground, stays in the ground. Our company, who is behind my little company, has 50 years of experience, squeezed into the ground over 500 million tons of CO2. So there is a stable data which proves that. And because it's an engineering process, it's very, very transparent. You know the diameter of the pipe, the pressure. This is science. It's not a forest which is hard to accessible. You need a good satellite. You need this coverage, that coverage. So I said, why are we not trying to help our nature-based friends? Offering our very long-term durability, maybe in a blended portfolio with other removals, and mitigate their risk and make it more affordable. That's the initial idea which we reached out to the insurance industry to open, or not even the instrument, but the capacity of our plant could be an insurance. You don't even have to buy that credit, just buy an option on a capacity of the plant. And these things can make this to work more efficiently. And we removing this animosity between the two sides, because actually we need the kitchen sink and the nature-based removals and the tech removals. So that was the initial idea of my thesis, that we would like to explore it. We had a lot of positive initial reactions for it. And we also believe that when we speak about the end-to-end integrity of the carbon market, these instruments can help that end-to-end integrity because they provide a very transparent process.
By the way, you have the microphone there for the next round. Question to both of you. Do you think you understand for the project that you are buying carbon credits from or that you're developing, do you think there's a sound databases in relation to the durability of your current portfolio or of the current projects, like for the various classes of nature-based projects that you are buying or the various classes of technology removal projects that you are buying? Maybe David first.
I don't know if it's working, but if you look at it, currently our company 1.5, which is a project development company, I believe contracted 60% of all DEX sales so far. We contracted probably close to 1 million ton. And these were not inexpensive instruments. And every buyer looked at us very, very carefully. And everybody is comfortable with the data. And Airbus, All Nippon Airways, Shopify. So we have companies who put a lot of due diligence into it. So we are very comfortable with that.
And where do you put the durability in terms of years?
People talk about 1,000 years, and it's probably there are thousands of years, but it's 100-year plus. Big plus.
And Bryce, in your portfolio, are you collecting that data, or is that data that you're currently interested in to understand what is the projected durability of the carbon vintage units that you are purchasing?
Like I said, the first question is whether this is something that is, being liquid in the market. I'm not so sure. I think we've not really received any request or specific demand around permanence for the kind of projects or credits we are selling, and we are now more active in upfront prepayments or kind of upstream market. We're trying to be. So I think no, we not really received any kind of specific request around permanence. Although this is a key question, of course. Some of the questions we get are more around community involvement, co-benefits, and very general questions around quality and integrity, and however you define this. And of course, permanence is part of that question. But I think we've not really have received any requests to blend in NBS classical project with kind of tech removal credits. I think the main question we're asking ourselves is whether this is, again, to me the main question is whether there is an economic model behind this that makes sense from a commercial standpoint, from a demand standpoint. There might be some specific demand from high-tech companies that are looking to buy these sort of credits, but from utilities type of businesses or services oriented businesses, we've never had any kind of questions around that. So this is the perspective we're coming from. I think it's a question of how do you measure this sort of permanence beyond the 100 years kind of timeline? I think we talked about this company in the US that developed this 10-year accounting methodology, which was a big failure, and it was based on a 100-year accounting process. I think that gives you an example or an idea of how difficult that can be and whether that can be adapted in the market easily.
That company that you just managed, what was their failure? Was it the failure that they didn't have the data to establish what is the actual durability across different project types? Or was it that nobody was interested in durability as a priced co-benefit of a carbon credit?
I think my understanding is that it's a simple matter of whether the methodology they developed behind the calculation process was adopted or not. The complexity of it compared to what's been kind of used in the market so far, which is the more classical approach, is what made it fail. Basically, nobody really understood what was behind it, so nobody really wanted to adopt it. And I think even Vera kind of rejected that approach. They try to make it work with kind of develop their own methodology. It's based on an IFM kind of project type, and to me this is the main issue. Is like can you have an adoption rate? That is good enough that a new methodology, a new approach makes sense. For a large number of actors in this market to use something like that. Yeah, I think that's the main question.
I mean, and this is also where I would like to start now your comments on this. Now, we have something to say on this question of, is the durability of a carbon credit, is that already kind of like priced in the market? Now, like basically right now we're talking about a carbon credit as 1 ton removed or avoided in a year versus the likelihood of 1 ton being removed or avoided over a period of 100 years, which is a completely different metric. No? I would say, based on my observation, we don't have that metric yet. No, we don't have the metric of the likelihood that a ton is avoided or reduced for a 100-year period. In the earlier session on end-to-end integrity, I heard that conversation, but we're clearly not there yet, though this is like very, very early on in the process. No? For me, it would be a driver of integrity, but I also realize we're not there yet. No? To some extent, maybe some emerging pockets, but I mean, like your observations, questions, comment are now highly appreciated. No? Please just raise your hand if you want to participate in the conversation. Now, I want to make this really open and not one way. That's always so boring. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Pascal. Do we have a speaker for the... Yeah. Let me go get that.
Thank you for this discussion. Unfortunately, I think the first thing that the 100 year that you're mentioning are not things that is accepted by everyone. Well, it's challenged. Is it 100 year or not, right? Yeah. And so I wouldn't take as a given that 100 year is, let's say, what needed to be reached, because there is no science between these 100 years, right? Yeah. And there is a lot of challenge by NGOs on that. That's the first topic. And then for nature-based solution, there are already methodologies. I mean, I know if they are good enough, which is, managing test risk, like a buffer approach at the project of the level project. And this level can be changed, also maybe better assessed according to the project itself. But I think it's about 20%, so it's nothing. And there should be also buffer between projects, so with a portfolio approach, right? So I'm not an expert, in nature-based solution, but this is, difficult to explain. And I saw, the paper of Article 6.4 today and what, they will do. And I saw, again, that the sentence yearly accrediting is back. what you were mentioning, it seems to be back, that SB has to access again this yearly crediting, right? And you have to know that also in the past there has been, the temporary CRs, because which was a complete failure, where, the people would say, okay, they have to buy every 5 years the credit again. So the market cannot bear, a non-permanence risk. So it has to be built at the project level, at the insurance level, but not at the buyer level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pascal, when you look at the Article 6 text, you also can see that they're calling for insurance products. And I love hockey. And in hockey, there is a saying, you don't shoot the puck where the other guy is, but where he's going to be. The market is changing. We had a carbon market where we were selling projects based on emotions, like a used car. The priest only drove it on Sunday when it was not raining. And every project had a story. When you want to move to a larger scale, from 2 billion, maybe to 200 billion, it's going to be treasuries who are going to make these decisions, not a CSO.
Yeah.
They want to have something which is transparent, which is homogeneous. They can get it. They can get an insurance product. And by the way, if there is an insurance product, then you don't have to set aside things to the buffer, so the project proponent can have more revenues. Yeah. And you're just adding the sophistication what I think a market in the future will require. And now we have removals. 3 or 4 standards are working on removals. We're working together on CCS Plus. Puro just throw out a bunch of removals which is not meeting the 100-year threshold. And some of them I loved, actually, wood construction materials and so on. So everybody is going towards that. You look at the GCC new methodology, what they are just published for review. So you can see that this is coming. And we have to mature as a market, or we're not going to be impactful. And for that, I think an insurance product is essential. And I want to go back to what you said about community impact. Direct air capture and removals are not just for the Northern Hemisphere. Some of the greatest potentials for this type of technologies are in Kenya, Indonesia, Malaysia, where you have the ideal renewable. You do not need to build the grid because you put the on location, on site. And it can directly benefit the local communities because they own the land and they get a lease payment on the land. So it can deliver social impacts as well. Yeah. So I believe this is very, very important. And we have to let this evolution to start on the market.
Yeah. Always just raise your hand, otherwise we will continue the conversation.
Yeah,
but
can I just ask, what we say is not contradictory, but when you say about insurance, for me it's complementary with what was today. So what we have today with Vera is not nothing. So we have already, a system that can be changed or improved. My question is about insurance. When you about the insurance topic, how do you see it? Do you see it at the project level? Do you see it at the standard level? Because from my perspective, I don't see it as a buyer level, because the risk is as a project, right?
No, I think you're absolutely right about this also. No? And just to, just one point, like the current approach, like at the project level is also not working, because to insure trees with more trees is not how you do risk. Risk is decorrelating things, not stacking on top of each other, the same class of risk, right? So we need other types of units to ensure the non-durability risk of that kind of unit. So we need this portfolio-based approach in order to manage risk and to get to durability, and it's very right. I would say it's not on the project level, it's on the portfolio level. And I mean, risk and insurance is always about aggregation. No? You cannot mitigate a risk for a project with a project. No? So we have to go to that portfolio level anyhow. No? And yes, and buyers need the assurance that what they buy is what they pay for is in fact also what they get, right? And it's it's the developers, yes, but I think we have the insurance industry to take the risk between the buyer and the seller. No? So that's why, like this, the ability of the project developer community to take those risks, I would say, is limited, because they might not have access to portfolio or to the balance sheet that you would need for that. No? And it's too bad that our colleague from insurance is not here, but I think it's very clear there's a very natural role. The other observation I want to make, what you said, is important. The voluntary carbon market 1.0 was governed by NGOs. Sorry, Vera, also, no? And the market 2.0 is going to be regulated by financial regulators. No? And this is, and financial, and then the categories of risk, and what happens if you're not delivering become very real. No? What was very interesting is when the announcement was made on the Interstandard Corporation, who were the other people in the room? Financial regulators. No? And through them, that topic of risk insurance will become a very hard reality for everyone in the space. No? So I think actually this, I can already see this is becoming a very interesting conversation, because it becomes more and more clear to me that this question of ensuring that durability over an extended period of time, like the effectiveness time of carbon in the atmosphere, becomes extremely important.
Hi, Kathleen Kulmans from Landlife. So we do ecosystem restoration, tech-enabled ecosystem restoration while putting nature first. I really think you're raising a very interesting point. And I do think that a lot of sophisticated customers out there in the market are already doing this on a portfolio level. It is actually happening. So, we are part of portfolios where there are other types of solutions in there as well. And that is also what we really advise our customers, right? You need to have variability across geographies, across different types of low or high-tech technologies to actually make this happen. So, but of course, like I do agree, I haven't seen, the request from a specific customer yet to bring that back to, let's say, the project developer level. But that could be an opportunity to further explore. Absolutely. I actually really agree with you that is something that is worth looking into, because it may bring together benefits from very different angles.
Our colleague from Howden, we wanted Tim to present case studies. No? Now, if you don't mind, I have like so many questions to you. If you could share, where is it happening in the market? Like, where do you see and how is this constructed that goes beyond buffer creation, like real insurance? And if you would like to, I would like to invite you to take that chair, because it is really the role that was kind of like intended to be here. But you're also comfortable over there. It's fine.
I also need to leave in about 15 minutes.
Okay,
so I think
please
it's better
then.
that
You have the floor.
I honestly don't know the details of the construction, but I do know that this is already happening at a certain scale. And typically, those companies that know how to manage risk, so in other words, financial institutions or large infrastructure companies, are the ones that are really trailblazing here. You won't see an FMCG company taking this type of approach quite very easily, except if there's a very forward-looking, and daring chief sustainability officer that works really well with their chief risk and chief and CFO to make this happen. But it is a lot less likely.
And the portfolio creation that happens, is it within the same class of projects, like portfolios of nature-based, or do you already see portfolios that cross over from, let's say, low durability nature-based into high durability technology?
Absolutely,
yeah?
yes.
And is this using insurance or just portfolio construction?
These are using mainly portfolio constructions, that I know of at least.
I think here comes, again, how you mature the market. And portfolio could work for a long time, but I think as we grow this, it needs to be more sophisticated. And also one really interesting thing about DAC on the MRV side, which the integrity, that some of these instruments you are being created, it has some tax benefits or tax credits in the United States. So we have to comply on two ways on MRVs. One, towards our standards, One is with the U.S. tax authority, which is a bit tougher than voluntary standard today, and the risk of the management of the project proponent is much greater with that, because the enforcement is legendary. So I think that also helps to create the integrity of this market. And then just, last few years we started to see the emergence of the rating agencies focusing on carbon, Silver, B0. These guys are really crucial. So that was one checkbox towards sophistication. The other one, what I really see, is the insurability and to have insurance product specifically for this. And that could create the harmony what I think the two side needs, because they shouldn't view each other as threat. I think it's just really crucial.
Okay, so again, just raise your hand, otherwise I'll just continue with my, do we have portfolio-based approaches to manage risk, durability risk? We don't yet have insurance. Question maybe, why is that? Is the problem maybe that we don't, is there something lacking? Like, for example, do we have all of the data that we would need to price an insurance policy? Is that the problem? Or is it that carbon is not financially regulated enough in order to call the insurance companies to come? I mean, we know there are some who are now starting to work on this, and there are some who start to offer products, but unfortunately not present today. But is the insurance industry ready, or is the market ready enough to bring the insurance companies in as basically as a conduit and catalyst to massive scale? No? So do we still need to do homework, or are we there? It's just that it's on them to say, come in.
I think it's all of the above.
Yeah.
When I look at DAC industry in the world, there is one major DAC plant currently operational in Iceland. And the major DAC plant is 4,000 tons per year. It's not that much. A plant we are building, the first phase of it is going to be 500,000 tons a year.
Yeah.
That's going to be operational by end of next year. And then we know others, there are some ambitious projects bringing a few million tons. We have projects in this removal space in Europe, which are going to be very robust. So I think once these plants are not just going to take forward sales, but they're going to actually be operational, it's going to give more comfort to insurance companies to enter the market, because it's mostly assumptions today.
Okay.
But I want to emphasize that there is a track record of 500 million tons of CO2 sequestered into the ground, and we know how CO2 behaves.
Yeah.
So that we have data.
Yeah.
Pascal.
But I think today, we are missing two things. First, I mean, the risk of non-permanence on NBS is very difficult to qualify. So we have no tools for that, and we have probably, it will be very long before we have enough data for insurance company to have models running. Second thing, I mean, you need to know if the risk is materializing over 100 years. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So meaning to have, let's say, the monitoring somehow of the project for 100 years. And when you look today, the cost of the monitoring is high, and it's just now, like ICVCM said, you need to monitor for 40 years, not 100, right? So ICVCM rules, it's starting with 40 years, right? So meaning that we need also to be able to monitor at cheap cost, and the digital solutions may be there, but they have to be developed. So on the standards themselves, they have to grow this timeline to 100 years if you think it's 100 years. But we are not yet there in terms of rules either.
Yeah, okay, those are two basically, we lack supply. I mean, insurance providers, when they underwrite, they need an asset that they can actually draw on in the case of default. If there's not enough product, they cannot issue the policies. Problem one. Problem two is, without knowing the level of non-durability risk, how can you price the risk? So we have a data problem. No? And maybe, and this is maybe back to Bryce or anybody else who wants to say something, maybe the third problem is that the market is not yet valuing durability. in nature-based. Like, so, in your assessment, when you evaluate, like, I think you made it very clear, when you evaluate the merit of and the value of a carbon credit from a project, you look at a bunch of parameters, but durability is not one. Or maybe, like to some extent, right? So maybe that's also the problem, no? If the buyers, and maybe also to you, if the buyers don't value durability, why provide it? If it's not asked for. So, though that's a bunch of homework, I think, and maybe there are other parameters, but comments welcome.
Sorry, just from, conventional. Daniel Scholz from Future Camp. I've been working on carbon accounting since many years, 15, 16, offsets, ETS, and recently more the other side, how company report data, with a bit of spin, let's say. My concern is that if you look at durability and data, it's quite evident that you don't have, let's say, the data right now, because durability will just materialize over time. And I would argue that any police issued would be based on experience and data aggregate based on experience in the end. And how shall you evaluate anything that is this forward-looking information you don't know yet, be it a product developer or an insurer?
Mind you, on sequestration, we have 40 to 50 years data. So there is data.
But we have data, but we have not crunched it from that perspective, maybe. We have raw data, but we don't have analysis, I think. But make your point, sorry, I interrupted.
I mean, I truly believe that what I really, when I signed up to do this project, it was very different compared to what I did before in the carbon space. And what I like that it was innovation, but most of the elements of the innovation was built on existing solutions. So for 50 years, they were putting the CO2 into the ground. The technology on the deck, a lot of the elements, and was not newly developed technologies.
Yeah.
They just, as a module, they put it together. And most of the elements have a track record. So from our perspective, I believe there is a data. Also, I don't believe without that data, the US would have agreed
Again,
to pay $180 a ton for sequestering a ton of CO2 and a 45Q. So there is data, but what maybe is possible that for a wider industry there is not enough data, and because this was also a niche market, this data is not very widely known to people. So I think everybody needs to do his homework, and people need to communicate on this. Yes, Pascal.
Yeah, I think we're missing two segments, because on DAC or CCS, people are quite confident, and you're true that we need to go into data to convince people that permanence is there. But on the net-based solution, I think it's well the point. On the other side, we are lacking data. But I wanted to go back to to make it work, we need to have someone willing to pay for it, right? And that's what you say. So if you see today, the markets, which are voluntary market, is clearly not valuing, permanence today, because it's too complex today. There are already so many topics in the way. If you look to a regulated market, the US, California market, or the market in Australia, which is growing, they accept carbon credits with a limited part in US, but also IQs, which is a credit, nature-based credit for most of them in Australia, will be accepted. And today, this regulated market, they don't really manage the permanence risk. There is nothing, right? If you look to what's happening in Europe today, there is building a new standard for removals, specifically for removals, and they separate categories, and they have carbon farming, which is all the nature-based solutions, so being forestry, agriculture, and there is permanent carbon storage. So they say permanent carbon storage, we are confident it will stay long enough, so we think that it can be eligible in the EU ETS. So they don't want to shout it, because if it's a political topic, they will start to say it in 26, so pretty well. But so what is written today on the carbon farming is something very surprising, because if you lose the carbon, you lose the credit. And the market is not able to handle that. So on the other side, they're putting, let's say, a barrier of carbon farming in Europe, which is, let's say, very impossible to fill. So that's why maybe we need solutions, maybe like carbon insurance, to make sure that the carbon farming is becoming, for the eyes of the EU, having the durability that will match the EU ETS. And there maybe there could be a first need. Or maybe this could echo, and maybe US, California could also be more stringent. But I think it's where it has to start something. It has to start it with this type of ETS, which are allowing carbon credits.
Okay.
Maybe I can help on this topic, because I was reading this European directive on the carbon removals and what they're planning to do. And what you mentioned was the type of carbon removals and the example of binding carbon in agricultural soils. And because it is very difficult to secure the permanence of this carbon fixation, they just try to go the way that they say that permanence is defined by the project duration. So they accept the permanence for this fixed carbon as long as the project is ongoing. From my point of view, this is not 100% permanence, and especially in the example of the soil organic carbon enhancement, it's very questionable if this carbon stays fixed after the project lifetime. So durability is a very difficult point also for afforestation and reforestation projects. What I see as a project developer is that the nature-based solution project implementers, they say we can guarantee the carbon sequestration for the duration of our project, but after 30 years, a normal project goes over 30 years, nobody really knows what the government of the host country will do with this area. And the project implementer, maybe he can arrange some contracts for the next 10 years, even if they promise to have the project running until 30 years.
I think there are different ways to go about that. So what we, for example, do is in some countries where we work, we put covenants over the land that, turn them into nature perpetually. That is possible if you have the right legal frameworks in place in those countries to actually, which are reliable and that you can actually work with. But I do think, there's... you made a point in the beginning of this conversation saying, I don't want to, go into a two-camp type of conversation. So why don't we just zoom out a little bit? There are very different ways to actually ensure permanence and to mitigate risks related to nature-based solutions projects. And that is also mitigating and working together in a larger landscape view, allowing to, make it more valuable for nature to remain there where it was and to, involve communities and cities on a very different level instead of on a project level, which may be 1,000 hectares. You're talking about, an entire community or an entire municipality or region that gets involved. And that is something that, a certain number of NGOs and other organizations are trying to establish under the European Green Deal, for example, to actually get landscapes to be included in the European Green Deal to speak about, nature-based solutions at a completely different level.
And now, wearing the hat of science, climate science, shouldn't a carbon credit that comes from a project then that can guarantee this kind of durability because of jurisdictional, legal rights, project design related questions be worth so much more than a project that cannot guarantee the future after 30 years? Considering, the climate science on how long CO2 is in the atmosphere or not. No? And shouldn't it be a major value driver? I mean, it's it's a difference between having that carbon really sequestered versus not. No? And is it not crazy that we are not valuing it enough? Maybe to you. Or do you see a premium already for the project that you do that can look beyond 30 years versus projects that cannot look beyond 30 years?
Potentially, you'll need to ask our customers. I honestly, I think it is rather it can make a difference when engaging in a project. That in the first place, right? To better understand, if you see that, risks are mitigated on several different levels, going from, the operational implementation risk to financial and any legal risks, that is a reason why a customer will engage with a project, because they actually feel that indeed it is safe and it covers a number of different elements at the same time, right?
So basically, durability is more like a switch, like a black and white decision. This is all about like a due diligence questions versus a value-based question. And maybe it's a due diligence questions and not a value question because there is no insurance. Because insurance could mitigate this and turn this into a value question, which means projects with shorter durability with insurance all of a sudden pass the bar and ultimately have more value, which is exactly kind of like the hypothesis that I have is an insured nature-based solution project is all of a sudden worth so much more and can contribute so much more, let's say, to community and other benefits, no? If that existed, right, and if there was a market side on that. But you, David.
I just want to go back to your comment. You hinted one very important element. The role of governments. If we grow this market from this 2 billion to much bigger, governments will have to have a major role. And I truly believe that after 20, 30 years or so on, some of these risks can be taken over by governments for guaranteeing, especially when large-scale investments are coming. A DAC plant, for a 1 million-ton DAC plant, it's $1 billion. So if I tell a government, I'm going to put this in, but after 20, 30 years, I expect you to take on that risk, and they understand what little chance is there for leakage back, they can do it because in exchange they're getting a lot of investments, infrastructure, so on. So I think this could be a key. So I think we will have to have a totally different environment we had in the past. And then we didn't speak about net zero. We aiming for net zero objectives.
Yeah.
When you gonna do net zero objectives, these instruments with durability become much more important. Otherwise, the instrument cannot be used.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
Yeah. Very good. More comments on this? Yeah. In terms of, okay, we have just 10 minutes left, and I also kind of like then want to wrap this up a little bit. The message to the insurance industry, or like the message, what's the takeaway from this? Like to say, so there is a need for insurance. It's really too bad that our colleague Rowan isn't here, so we have to speak on their behalf. No? Basically, what is it that the carbon market people need to do? And what is it that the insurance people need to do to create products that help us create that value?
I think this market is crying out for insurance. That's why Article 6.4 put it in there. You want to grow it, you will need it.
Yeah.
Buffers are delivering some value, but it's very antiquated. You can't really manage it.
Yeah.
And if you guys read the Commodity Future Trade Commission's, they issued their first VCM comments and what type of regulations they're trying to be. This needs to be a much more sophisticated market if you want to grow it. And that is one of the key elements. And actually, as these plans are coming online, I think there is going to be comfort to the insurance and the type of companies. Because the other one is, you have a project proponent who is a startup, how you insure that, versus a company who maybe have a 50, 100 years track record, has a balance sheet, and so on. So we need to grow it, we need to be more sophisticated, because otherwise you're never going to scale it to address our problems. I think it's just a natural evolution.
Bryce.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to add to that. I think it's the key for us is to understand the liquidity of this evolution. I think the pricing point that was made around, okay, if we put in place this insurance mechanism, that's great. We do have, there could be value in it, but how do you kind of sell that? Who do you sell that to? And what's the price attached to it? We are a trading company. We want to know, how that kind of how we can generate value out of this. And that's the key point there. And I think at this point in time, there's not so much of a demand. It's more like an expectation. And as long as that demand doesn't exist, it's very hard to identify whether there is potentially something to be done there.
Where do you see it where do you see this business in a year or in 2 years from now?
For us, the major change is going to be once we don't have to sell forward, but we have an operational plan, and we are planning to build a second one. And the company stated that they want to build 130 of these, 1 million ton each. So then we're starting to really creating scale.
But when is insurance going to come in? In a year?
I think the insurance we are engaging is going to start now, and in a few years, 2-3 years, there should be a sophisticated product on the market. Remember, the last thing I have, which I say to people who I work with in carbon, we are in a perception business. We always were doing perceptions. And we need to change the perception of the carbon market. Because that's what it's all about. Everybody has a perception. And we need to change that perception, because today is not that good.
And what will come first? Insurance, product in the market, or scale?
Scale. What scale? I mean, we have to have plans.
Yeah.
That's what's going to attract. Insurance guys are money guys. They work with a calculator, not with emotion.
Yeah.
They insure your life. They don't care they like you or not like you. So I think we have to have the scale, we have to have the ability to show, and then they come. And I apologize to every insurance expert for this assessment, but that's my perception of them.
I want to thank all of you for coming. When you see insurance in carbon, remember you heard it here first, the first conversation, and hopefully next time there is an event like this, it's going to be with some real insurance heavyweights on the panel. No? Thanks so much for coming.
Interesting. Is there any demand for companies to ensure the durability of their carbon credits?